If you are not frequent airplane traveler and someone asks you to switch your window seat for their kid, what would you say? Hello everyone! Do not forget to put likes and subscribe to the channel. Story 1. I got scolded for this exact scenario on a trip a few weeks ago. The mom asked if I would switch the window seat for the middle seat so her child could look out the window. She didn't even offer her aisle seat because she would be uncomfortable in the middle seat. I'm 6'3", she was maybe 5'5" tops. I told her it was absurd of her to ask. She got the flight attendant involved. They asked if I would move. I asked where they would move me that would be convenient for me. They said first class. Lady was not impressed that I got upgraded. Story 2. I have a friend who is a very frequent flyer. Always gets window or aisle, always puts on her earphones as soon as she sits down. She's been asked several times to switch seats, usually ignores the people, pretending she can't hear them. Most leave her alone. 2 or 3 haven't, and tap her on the shoulder until she responds. She has just looked at them and smiled, saying, "No thank you, that doesn't work for me," and puts the earphones back on. This has kind of confused these people and they leave her alone. Story 3. Just got back from a trip, United Economy, plus to Europe, front row, 10-hour flight. The guy next to us was super patient for the first hour as my husband and I wrangled our baby. Flight attendant politely asked if we wanted a bassinet setup, which would require the gentleman to have to move from his window seat, and the FA also asked if he'd be willing to move. We said we'd love it, but only if the man got moved to a better seat. They put him in first class for the rest of the flight. Pays to be nice sometimes, folks. Story 4. No. Listen, we all know what that whole thing is. If you want to sit next to someone, buy a guaranteed seat. People are picking cheaper the airline picks where you sit tickets, under that assumption that they will be able to bully people into moving. ETA. They aren't bullying them, they are just pestering them. Guilt-tripping them isn't the retort you think it is, people. Story 5. Nope. When I plan to fly, I will book the flight well in advance and carefully book my seat, window aisle or emergency aisle. If there's an extra fee, I'll pay it gladly. People who want to trade seats to A, sit next to someone, or B, to have more legroom can pound sand. Your problem is not my problem. Learn to plan better. Story 6. Absolutely not. I pay for that seat. I pick it specifically so I can enjoy the view on my flight. I enjoy watching the clouds and the wing and flaps in action. There are only a handful of seats that I prefer, so when I get one, it's mine. I once had a lady ask me if I could close my window for the entire flight because she was scared. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Sorry, but I got this seat to use the window. You'll have to look the other way." "You really won't close the window for me?" "Nope. Got to enjoy my view for the next 6 hours," and she made it through the flight just fine. Story 7. Nah, I always pre-book my seats and pay extra. I really don't care what the excuse is. If you cared more than I did about the seat, you would have pre-booked it and paid. The issue isn't courtesy here. The issue is people not wanting to pay the extra for pre-booked seating and then trying to play musical chairs before the plane takes off. Ryanair in the UK is the worst for people trying to do this. Cheap airlines for you. Story 8. As crew, I absolutely hate this **T. Last year in particular was really bad for seat shenanigans, mainly thanks to a run of news articles about people refusing to move and various arguments leading to a large number of people on my flights putting their foot down and refusing to move, then leaving me and the rest of the crew to sort out. Now, there have been instances where a flight has been canceled and/or someone has bought the last 2 seats, and it's resulted in a split. And believe me, I will endeavor to help out. But if you are just a tight sod who won't pay to select their seat, then frankly they can get stuffed. I don't want to pay for my seat selection, but I want a window seat, and thus I pay to select one. I'm not happy about it, but I will do it because I want it. It is not fair that others try and bully others into moving around, and believe me, if they do that, the bullying/strong-arming on my flight, they are given the option of sit down and shut up or get off. Some passengers feel a massive sense of entitlement of, my children have to sit with me by law. And that's not quite right. A row in front, behind, or across the aisle counts as together, and also the age of the child counts. A 17-year-old is an adult. Sorry for the rant. As for me when traveling PAX, I don't care if you are the King of England, you ain't getting my window seat. Story 9. I always pay for my seat selection. I've had people ask me if I could swap for multiple reasons. I always reply with, I paid for this seat selection. The best one was a young couple that asked. I was sitting in the emergency exit row, gives you more legroom. He was sitting next to me. He asked if his partner could swap with me because she needed legroom due to her having knee pain. I replied with my usual answer. He sent her back to her seat and he sat back down next to me. Guess he really cared about her knee pain. Story 10. I would only switch my seat for an equivalent or better seat. I make sure to pay and arrange my tickets early to have the seat that is best for me. Someone else's procrastination is not my problem. Story 11. I would say no, I'm a bigger girl and I don't get up because I'm scared people will give me crappy looks about getting up and making them move. It's bad enough I have exist in their space. And a kid would then be up and down and I can't. Nope, not even for my own kiddo. Story 12. As soon as I get seated, my headphones go on, and I'm asleep before takeoff. If they wake me to ask, then they'd be rudely told no because I'm a cranky twat when awakened. Story 13. At this point, I'm genuinely offended you are even asking me unless you are actually trading me something equal or better. No one wants your middle seat, and it's always a crappy middle seat in the back of the plane. No one has ever asked if they can give me their first-class seat in exchange for my window seat in coach. And if I booked a window, it's because I want a window. Why in the world would I trade for a stranger and their random kid? Pay the $10 if it's that important to you for the seat assignment, or book with a better airline that doesn't require it. Or ask the gate agent, please stop putting this on random passengers and making them uncomfortable. Story 14. As someone that's 6 and 9, I spent probably 5 hours making 100% sure that I'd fit in the particular seat I'm in before buying it. Unless the airline is moving me to first class, to give up my seat, the only place I'm guaranteed to fit. There's no chance anyone for any reason is getting me to move to another random seat in the plane. Story 15. Southwest, I saw some seats at the back of the plane. United, sorry, but this is my seat. United, sitting by the door. Sure, you take this seat and risk your kid being sucked out the plane when the door comes off. Delta, calm down, ma'am, or the flight attendant will drag your kid off the plane. Spirit, sorry, but that will cost extra. Window seats are a $20 per hour upgrade fee. Story 16. Reminds me of this time I took a flight from Rome to Los Angeles. This was a return flight from our honeymoon. There weren't many seats left when I purchased, so I had to buy separate spots for me and my wife. Lots of people buying single seats and leaving single middle seats. Anyway, I managed to get her a window and I took a middle about 2 rows behind her. When I get to the seat, there's a guy by himself at the window. I ask him if he would mind swapping with my wife. She also has a window and is 2 rows ahead. He says sure. I tell him, let me go tell her thank you. I go and tell her, she comes back with me, and as soon as we are both at my row, he starts to stand up and says, you know what? Actually, I'm already settled in. I'm going to change my mind and say no. I then had to sit for 11 hours next to this asshat. Story 17. I would generally just say no, unless the seat they were offering to trade was more desirable to me. I choose and pay for the seat I want in advance. They should have done the same. Edit to add. There are exceptions, of course. Did we have to switch planes and the seating is all messed up anyway? Are you being nice to me or are you being a bully? A nice smile and a please goes a long way versus being an entitled ass about it. Story 18. Coming from a large family that had no money and had to move around the world meant the job paid for our airline tickets at rock-bottom price, and there were at least 3 kids with my parents on any given flight, separated, even as a toddler. The only way to not be next to strangers most times was a kind stranger switching with my mom so we could be together. Didn't always do it for each kid, just the young ones. If a stranger asks me to switch in economy so they can be next to their child, I don't care. I'm doing it. It's different. And case by case, if not for that reason though, but if they're obviously split up and my seat can group them, then I'll give it. Story 19. Could this be a generational thing? I'm a boomer, and my immediate reaction was, of course I would. It wouldn't have even occurred to me before reading this thread that someone would cheap out on seat selection and assume that they'd be able to negotiate a window seat for their kid. And even if they did, why should the kid suffer because their parent is an asshole? Their life with that parent probably already sucks enough as it is. Story 20. Under 2 hours and no interesting geological features on the way? Sure. Longer than that and I was planning to sleep? Or I pre-mapped geological sites along the flight path, one of my interests? Probably not, because I chose the seat for that purpose, to have the wall to lean against and not be climbed over every time somebody has to use the bathroom. Edit. Kids get bored of the window pretty quickly after takeoff anyway, in my experience. Story 21. I pay to sit with my kid and just wouldn't travel if it wasn't guaranteed. But yeah, sometimes shit happens. If I'd paid for that particular seat, I'd let the attendant or parent know and say I'm happy to move for similar or an upgrade, as I have literally paid extra for this seat. Just not some middle seat shenanigans, etc. If I hadn't paid, I'd probably just expect a fairly similar seat and kick up less of a fuss depending on how the parent asked. I'm not exactly a giant, but 6'3". I pay for extra legroom almost all the time. If I don't get it, I'm pretty cranky. Honestly, even with kids of my own, expecting someone to move because you didn't cough up to guarantee it is entitled and crazy. I've seen it come up on TikTok, etc., that people are dicks for not moving. But honestly, I think if the airline can't accommodate the move for something similar, then you shouldn't move. It's the individual's fault for not planning ahead and expecting the universe to work around them. Story 22. If I didn't have to go to the bathroom so frequently, I would always want a window seat and am willing to pay for it. Now, I always request an aisle seat, so I don't have to bother other people when I get up and down. If people want to be cheap and take a chance on bullying someone who planned ahead, then it's their problem if people won't be intimidated. I think people who do that have a colossal nerve. What makes them think that their needs come before someone else's, especially when their problem is due to their lack of planning or cheapness? Too bad. Story 23. I feel like I'm all alone here, but yes, absolutely I would. That kid is going on an airplane and is probably excited as hell about looking out the window. I'm a grown-ass adult, and there is no situation here that is so awful that I couldn't shrug it off so a kid can have a fun experience. Story 24. I had something like this happen to me once. I was traveling across the country for work, about a 5-hour flight. I had a window seat, and in the middle was a boy around 10, 11. A few minutes before takeoff, a gentleman comes to me and asks if I'd be willing to trade seats with him so he could sit next to his son and his son could have the window. He was super polite about it, but I was skeptical at first, but he showed me his ticket. First class. I happily accepted his offer, but I had to know why he was willing to trade when he had first class. He told me that it was his son's first time flying, and he tried to find seats together with a window, but couldn't. He said he bought the first-class ticket with the intention of offering a trade so he could sit with his son. He even bought me a drink while on the flight. Story 25. I flew alone for the first time a couple of months ago, and these two girls asked me to switch seats. I was really flustered and for some reason embarrassed, so I just did it and suffered for the entire flight because of it. They didn't even need to switch. There was a seat available right there the whole flight. Anyway, no, I wouldn't switch. That was a life lesson, lol. If I paid for the seat, then I'm sitting in my seat. Story 26. If it's my window seat for their window seat in a different row so the family can sit together, then sure, whatever. Otherwise, no, I pay to pre-select a window seat. Is looking out the window of a plane for an infrequent flyer supposed to stop being awesome at a certain age? I want to look out too, and I pay to make sure I can look out. Story 27. I was a semi-frequent traveler back in the day. It didn't happen often, but back then I'd volunteer my aisle window seat if it meant someone's 7-year-old could sit next to their mom and brother instead of a middle seat in the middle aisle between two middle-aged adults. People say, plan better, but the family that travels once in a blue moon doesn't have the seat priority that frequent flyers have, and frankly just don't have experience with the airline UIs, systems, etc. to be able to get optimal seating. And while it's just another flight to me, it's a lifetime event for a kid. Story 28 depends on who is the asshole in the situation. If the airline rearranged your family seating, and now your kid is 2 aisles away in a comparable seat. When an airline switches people around, they usually put them in a seat in the same cost category. Sure, I'll switch with you. I've done this before. When you are trying to pull a fast one and try to use sympathy to get a better seat for a lower cost, I say, no thank you. I get airsick and need the aisle seat, which is actually true. Fortunately, I have never been in this situation. As a child of inconsiderate parents, I hated when my parents tried to do similar things. As a kid, I thought I was the problem, and as an adult, I realized my parents were at fault for not stepping up to take responsibility. Anyways, you can usually tell who is the asshat parent and who was dealt a bad hand by the airlines. One expects you to make the sacrifice for the good of their kids. The other parent acts embarrassed to even ask. Story 29. Nah, I have 2 kids. They'd love a window seat. If I was traveling, I'd book a window seat for them to share trade. I'd never dream of asking someone to trade seats so my kid can look out the window. Rude. My children aren't any more deserving of awe than anyone else just because they're adorbs. Story 30. No. I paid for that seat, LOL. I will only move if it's a row of 3, and if it was booked in a way where a family with a child was separated. that I can get behind. But if it's not a that issue, and it's a you want the window seat instead issue, that's not my problem, lol. I like the window seat. That's why I pay for the window seat. If you wanted a window seat, maybe you should have booked one. Story 31. I have no issue with swapping if I'm being given the same seat or a better seat. I used to always get upgraded to first class or business class, but my boyfriend was always in economy. If I wanted to sit with him, I would relinquish my seat, usually at the gate, to somebody else. But if my kid wants a window seat, then fine by me. I don't care enough to cause a fuss. Story 32. I love kids. I have 2 of my own, but would never ask another person to switch seats, so one of my kids can have the window, so I would say hell no. Thing is, when I do travel, it's usually long-haul flights for business, and I specifically choose the window seat so that I can lean that way to sleep without having to lean on a complete stranger. I book my flights well in advance and make sure to pick a window seat even if I have to pay for it on certain airlines. If I can think about the future, so can you, and you can plan accordingly. Asking a complete stranger to do something for your kid because you didn't think about it in advance is not only toxic, it teaches your kid to be entitled. Not on my fucking watch. Story 33. As a parent who flies, I would switch in a heartbeat to let parents sit with kids, but probably not just so a kid can have a window, unless the window would put them next to their parent when they weren't. People have to realize that airlines try to screw parents all the time, and they will absolutely expect that your 5-year-old sit between strangers. And I'm talking about when you pay for specific seats, not flying without assignment. We were coming home from Orlando and Delta moved a bunch of seats to accommodate a disabled passenger, and this caused my, at the time, 7-year-old son to be moved far away from us. Luckily, the gate agent was able to help us, but it was a stressful situation. Story 34. Whenever I turn down a request from someone else, I always just sort of act like I couldn't possibly accept their generosity. I'm extremely willfully obtuse about it while I extract myself from the situation. Oh no, I couldn't possibly make you change all your seats up. I'll be fine over here. I don't want to put anybody out. The whole time I'm putting in my earbuds, then it's back to looking out the window. I don't think anybody buys what I'm doing or anything like that, but it's usually unexpected enough that they're not certain how to immediately respond, and it buys me enough time to get my headphones on or otherwise make clear that I'm done talking, or leave the area if that's an option. Edit. Another one of my go-tos is to act like they're joking. Big laugh. Ha ha ha, good one. And then back to looking out the window.